It's major. I mean, the Chinese have adopted the principles of multilateralism. They're trying to demonstrate not only by their very growing financial contribution, but by the presence of peacekeepers, which is, as the piece mentioned, both dangerous and necessary in different parts of the world. China's clearly trying to be sort of the model for what it means to be a major power, a country that really doesn't need multilateralism in one sense. It doesn't need to be having peacekeepers deployed in different parts of the world, but it's trying to demonstrate that it really is a guardian of the UN's basic founding charter. The irony here is on this 50th anniversary, which was a very joyous occasion in October 1971, for the previous 22 years, as a consequence of U.S. policy, China was denied its rightful seat both in the General Assembly and at the Security Council. And even in 1971, a certain number of countries, including the United States, tried to prevent China from taking its seat. Now you hear today in America voices saying China's too aggressive, China's too assertive, simply because China is actually adopting in a very world-friendly way its responsibilities as a major power in a multilateral global setting.
So obviously China's shift towards multilateralism, as we heard there from Sarah Walton, came at a time under the Trump administration when the U.S. shifted towards unilateralism and bilateralism and created that window. But the UN is, as we know, is not just about peacekeeping missions. There's education, women, all sorts of things. How else is China pulling its weight at the global body?
Well, China now, or Chinese nationals, lead important institutions within the United Nations: civil aviation, telecommunications, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the Industrial Development Organization. These are major parts of the UN's mission. China has more and more become a leading player, including being the primary leadership, at least Chinese nationals from the PRC, in a number of these agencies. Of course, China's role during COVID, the fact that China was able to sequence the virus early on and by January 3rd, January 4th, share it both with the U.S. and with the World Health Organization. These are all indications that China's stepped up. China's trying to play a major role in the United Nations and in other international agencies to demonstrate that cooperation between powers, big and small, should take the place of confrontation. At the very moment that the Trump administration and the Pentagon reoriented U.S. strategy with almost no debate towards major power conflict as a U.S. priority, that goes against the interests and the wishes and the desires of the people of the world, I'd say, and including many people, perhaps the majority, inside the United States.
One of the looming international concerns at the moment is the DPRK, and we'll talk about that later in the show, but Beijing is one of the few capitals that has Pyongyang's ear, sort of. It's a tricky relationship for China, of course, and it's often put on the spot at the UN. Talk a little bit about that balancing act there.
Well, you know, China shares a border with the DPRK. China and North Korea worked together, and during the Korean War between 1950 and 53, hundreds of thousands of Chinese volunteers actually shifted the military balance of forces during the Korean War and drove U.S. or UN forces. At that time, the U.S. was operating under the fig leaf of the UN below the 38th parallel when they were already at the Yalu River. You know, the DPRK wants a new relationship with the United States. If the United States followed up and said, look, we're ready to have peace, the end of the Korean War, which was ended in 1953 only with an armistice, not a peace treaty, I'm sure the DPRK would reciprocate. The United States has used DPRK missiles or its nuclear tests really as a pretext to maintain very crippling economic sanctions. If we're going to live up to the UN Charter, that means lift those sanctions against the DPRK, declare peace instead of war with North Korea, and enter a new period. I think the DPRK is certainly willing to. They certainly indicated that at the two summits.